So I've heard critics of the move make the case that this is focusing on a D-Day Normandy style worst case invasion. But I happen to think, and I've made this argument for many years now, that this is exactly the type of scenario that Taiwan and the United States needs to focus on. The worst world you want to be in is a world in which you are weak on the worst case threat, and that incentivizes your potential adversary to then exploit that gap, exploit that weakness, and mount an all-out invasion. Furthermore, these sort of less worst case scenarios, things like provocations in the airspace or grabbing an island or economic and diplomatic coercion, although these are challenges, I've yet to hear somebody really articulate to me this theory of victory by which the PLA can grab an outlying island and then cause Taiwan to capitulate. It actually strikes me that most of these less worst case scenarios, if China were to attempt them, they would actually shore up deterrence. They would really galvanize not just the resolve of the Taiwanese people, but of Japan, Australia, the United States by showing China's true intent and, crucially, by giving the United States plenty of time to flow forces into theater.
So how about stopping the sale of the anti-submarine helicopters? Is there another weapon that Taiwan can use?
In light of the timelines that Taiwan is likely dealing with, if we take very seriously some of the threat analysis coming out of places like Indo-PACOM, this idea that by 2027, China could really seriously consider an all-out invasion, that in light of that, Taiwan needs to focus on its greatest vulnerabilities first. And that is to be able to absorb a body blow, absorb missile attacks, cyber strikes, and a naval blockade, and everything else that China could potentially throw at Taiwan, and to be able to hold the door open, hold out long enough for the United States and its allies and partners in the region to begin flowing support and forces into theater.
And there's a sort of backlog of orders from the Trump administration. Can you tell us the timeline for when these could arrive?
So that's exactly right. Under the Trump administration, I think if memory serves me correct, the United States and Taiwan agreed to something like $22 billion worth of arms sales. And just to keep things in perspective, Taiwan's defense budget last year was about $17 billion US. And so that's $22 billion of complex weapon systems, all of which need to be produced by a relatively small number of defense manufacturers in the United States. They're complicated weapon systems. We don't have a lot of firms that can build them. And so a lot of these things are going to take many years to show up. So some weapon systems like the M1A2 main battle tank that was actually agreed to many years ago, they won't even come fully online until 2027 or potentially later. And some of the even complex weapon systems Taiwan's trying to build on its own, like the indigenous diesel submarine, could take 5 to 10 years to really come out in the sorts of numbers that would make a difference.